So, welcome to my July branding clinic. I'm Sandra Koenig, and my business is Branding Harmony. And um, I came to what I do now through sort of a circuitous path of having worked in traditional branding for a long time. I then became a coach, and this branding work is bringing my past and my present together, where I do something I call brand coaching. And today I'm delighted to have my friend WavenDean Fernandes as my guest. And he has been embedded in the traditional branding world for a long time. And we've both worked at some similar firms at different times over the years in different roles. Like you've been more on the business development client side.
Correct.
And I was always on the design side in various roles. Anyway, I'm just delighted to have Dean here. We had lunch a couple months ago and I was talking about what I'm up to, and I felt like he really understood in a way that I didn't think people from the traditional branding world would, what I'm really up to in this. And I think he's got a really interesting and unique perspective working in the world of big brands. He's currently director of brand development at
Right.
Effective Branding, which is a consumer package goods branding firm in the East Bay in the San Francisco area. Anyway, but he's had a variety of roles at some, all the biggest branding firms in the Bay Area, and worked with a lot of major international brands over the years. So I'm really happy to have him here.
Thank you.
And so Waven wanted for everybody to introduce himself briefly, and if you have any questions or why you're here, if you want to just say that briefly, that'd be great. Anybody want to jump in?
Well, who's starting?
I'm Diane, and I'm with Sandra in Super Coach, and I'm just kind of looking at cobbling, just the beginning of cobbling together my presence. So I've watched a couple of the replays, Sandra, of your clinic, and I just kind of like where you're coming from, and so there wasn't anything specific I came here today looking for other than to just learn.
Great.
Diane, I'm gonna ask you guys questions. So Diane, what is your offering going to be? Do you have an idea yet of what that service or product you're going to put in the marketplace?
Well, coaching, and I think if you've spent much time talking to Sandra about where she coaches from, typically it's not about focusing in an area of specialty. So that may end up being that something could organically evolve for some people, but it's certainly not where I'm at right now. So it's pretty much just, coaching from the three principles perspective.
Okay, just last question. Your background in business, or what have you done?
In business, healthcare, very heavy on the marketing end, and then also operationally done a couple startup ventures.
Okay, and why for you to do this new journey then going forward?
Well, I think for me, personally, being exposed to the principles has made a tremendous difference in my life, and at the point that I'm at in terms of, obviously there's not a lot of brass rings I'm running around after anymore.
Yeah.
It's just something that I would enjoy, bringing to the world, and I'm still kind of figuring out exactly what that's going to look like.
So it's something you're kind of feeling called to?
Yes.
To do. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. We may have more things as we go forward. Next.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Monica. I am right in the middle of transitioning from one brand to another. I have some experience in graphic design and aesthetics and branding myself, so I wasn't really here for any other reason than just Sandra told me about it, and I thought, hey, that'd be fun. Corporate experience, I've got lots of that. I've worked as an executive assistant to the president of several very large companies in PR and communications, and I have a background in art history and museum studies. And still, well, I'm about to go back into the corporate world for a full-time position, but I'm shifting my offering. It was more coaching focused before, and I'm realizing that I have a little bit more strategic business focus that I want to bring to the table. So whether that looks like consulting or doing some graphic design and branding work for clients, or just a little bit of coaching, I'm not really sure, but I'm playing around with the idea. So
Monica, it sounds like the corporate job is going to be your day job.
Yeah, but I'm never happy having just one thing on.
Right. But the personal thing is the passion, that brand offering, and give me a sense of who that target customer would be.
I'm actually moving away from so I've taken all kinds of online courses and have done the marketing thing in a really prescriptive way. And I found that actually hemming myself into a really narrow ideal client avatar actually sort of hemmed up my creativity. And I found that I was sort of speaking into a void of like this imaginary person that didn't really exist out in the world. And I'm finding a lot more success now. And that's where this sort of strategic business thing is coming from, is rather than just putting an idea out there to some client avatar that may or may not exist, I'm now just engaging in conversations with people and responding to what they need. And so in some ways I'm experimenting with an anti-brand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And just trying to be really responsive and flexible to the people and to the needs that are in front of me. And so I'm like hesitating on the front of trying to describe a really specific individual. But I mean, the example that I can give you is I've been working with, smallish businesses who are at a period where they're, needing to look at scalability, needing to up-level their brand, needing to up-level how they're perceived in the marketplace, and just having conversations with them about what they need, and whether that's about, their team and performance, or whether it's about how they're perceived aesthetically. So that's a very broad stroke, I know, but.
Good
well,
start.
one of the things I find interesting about Monica, she's got a lot of skills that are highly developed that she can offer.
Okay.
Which is kind of counterintuitive as I develop this new whatever it is, because I'm used to packaging what I offer in a way that's very specific and narrow based on whatever need is there. So when I had an ideal client, it was easy for me to package something that was suited to that person. But I'm toying with the idea of just kind of being a little bit more broad and putting a few different things on the table and seeing what comes of it. So yeah, but it's sort of being an executive assistant for so many years, you end up being a little bit of a jack of all trades, So I have a lot of skills that don't really fit into a tidy box, but I'm playing around with how I can make them work in some cohesive way. Sandra and I have Sandra came up with the term, what are we calling it? Oh yeah, strategic business support.
Okay. Thank you.
Libby,
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
So I'm Libby. I'm here because I'm friends with Sandra, having done Super Coach together. And Sandra's done some work with me around branding a while ago, which was really good. And my background is as a doctor in the National Health Service in the UK. And over the last few years, I've had a foot in both camps of coaching people and working as a doctor. And the emphasis varies. At the moment, the emphasis is very much in the NHS. So I'm feeling quite burnt out at the moment, actually. It's kind of chewed me up and spat me out again.
Okay.
Which means I'm also, because I'm burnt out, I'm a bit confused about where I'm going with all this. I suppose the thing that kept coming up for us when we were talking was that I think this coaching work creates magic. There's something really magical about what we do. There's something very non-linear about how people come to their transformation, and that's what I love about the work. When I was originally a coach, I was pushed down the sort of niche route, and you're a doctor, so you should either coach doctors or you should coach people with health problems. And I don't want to be heavily niched. Having said that, I have developed a training role with doctors in training, who are struggling. So I am coaching within the niche of doctors, and I'm happy with that, but I don't want that to be all that I do. That's kind of a subcomponent of what I do. But other than that, it's pretty loose. I'm really up for having conversations with anyone, and I've worked with all sorts of people over the last few years. At the moment, my business is kind of, because I've been back in the National Health Service a lot, my business is right back to zero again. So I'm just kind of thinking about how to start up and struggling with things like trying to do my website and then deciding to get someone else to do my website and then them dying and then someone else taking over and now they've gone quiet. And yeah, it's just, I guess it'll happen when it's ready, but yeah, all of this adds to the confusion.
Well, Libby, can I say, Libby did one of my branding groups, and she had some very clear, a very clear vision about your brand related to the magic and kind of the idea of Mary Poppins and this amazing bag, which I loved, because it relates a little bit to the traditional doctor bag, whatever they call those things, doctors all around.
Doctor's bags.
And to me, it was such a reflection of who Libby is, because, even though you're a doctor, that holds a certain sort of gravitas, it's serious being a doctor. Like, you also have this really light spirit and fun way.
Yeah. I don't want to be seen as a flake, but I do think these conversations and transformation is fun. And it's about doing the serious stuff, but not taking it too seriously.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And, Michael, I know you've got your camera off, but Waven was asking everybody to just briefly introduce themselves and why they're here, if you had any questions.
All right. Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Yeah, maybe I'll try and switch my camera on in a moment. I jumped at the last minute. I nearly forgot about the event. So, yeah, I'm curious really about branding. So I've been in business as a coach and consultant for just about 2 years now. So starting really in a business where I'm familiar and building it from there. So now I want to spread the net further once you branch out of the kind of low-hanging fruit area, people you know and run into. And I've been experimenting with kind of creating a list. So I created an email database of 2,000 entrepreneurs that I've just built up through blogging and things like that. I've done a couple of parenting workshops because my heart really is in parenting, being a young dad myself. I'm not so young, my daughter's 2. And and kind of handing out leaflets and doing things the hard way there, landing on a couple of events and trying to get door-to-door, more canvassing, as that was closer to my heart as well, of getting in touch with real people as opposed to being anonymous behind your computer. So I've played with a few different things. So I'm curious now about branding and reaching out to more people and this aspect of, what marketing is and pain-based marketing, fear marketing. And I followed some Dean Jackson stuff and really just kind of getting my head around what all of that means and then where that's going to sit for me, having played with it a little bit, of getting a bit more serious about it now.
Okay, good. And your name was Mike, did I get that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. The mystery man with no picture yet. Okay.
Yes, I'm working on it.
But I have a voice profile, so that's good. Okay.
Maybe I'd love to have you just sort of give your description of what you think makes a great brand, or what is branding, anything you'd want to share about that?
Okay, yeah, I'll tie it to kind of my journey a little bit, right? So I've been in the branding and design and marketing world for 30 plus years now. Started at Apple Computer on the creative services side, and then got recruited by Landor. That's where Sandra and I got to know each other, and have been on the big to small branding agency side, both traditional and on the interactive side. The only kind of agencies I haven't been with are the traditional advertising agencies that would do radio or television and such, right? So I was running a branding office in San Francisco when in 2005, and my mom, I'm from Hawaii, born and raised, and multi-generation, origin in Hawaii. And then in 2005, I got a call that my mom's health situation was declining precipitously. She had Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So this big life thing came in the way of an orchestrated career trajectory, right? Because I was running this office and doing well and all that kind of stuff, and this other thing popped up, and I was called, pretty much forced by the universe, or creator, or however you term the entity, the energy that runs the whole show, that this is what I was going to do. And it made no sense whatsoever from a career perspective to leave San Francisco and go back to an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and not have a job and not be able to practice the career I had been in for 20 years at that point. But I did it. It didn't make sense, but I did it. So I was there. My mom's health, she went into a nursing home. She passed away, and then I came back to San Francisco and got into this world. But that was the impetus for me creating my own brand marketing company on my behalf rather than just working for one. I now have to be challenged with, can I take all this 20 years of stuff that I've learned and apply it in a marketplace that's really small with small businesses, mom and pop shops, small brands, not the kind of budgets that we were used to working at the Land or the other agencies, right? Did this stuff really work, or did it only apply if you had a lot of money and a lot of marketing muscle, right? Are these precepts and concepts working? So I was challenged, just like you guys, with creating my own brand when here I had been an expert in creating it for others, right? That's one thing. But now I was going to be drinking my own Kool-Aid. What kind of came from that, and I did a lot of spiritual soul searching, like it sounds like you all have. And the name kind of came to me, being from Hawaii, the name Mana. If you guys are familiar with Hawaiian or not, Mana means supernatural or spiritual or divine, really. And it's kind of like namaste. When people say aloha and those kinds of things, it really has spiritual connotations versus the tourism kind of context people have now. So Mana really means the highest calling you could probably have, to do things in what's called a very pono way, which is with integrity and all these things, right? So naming the company Mana, brand marketing, I was going to approach branding and helping people to put their brand into the marketplace from a spiritual perspective, for lack of a better word, from a more energetic perspective, rather than kind of like the more linear brain, right brain kind of stuff. I was going to come to it from a much more left brain perspective, infusing even how the business looked at it, not just the creative, right? Because the creative is stereotypically coming from a left brain, a right brain perspective. So having those sides of those things, correct me, Sarah, if I got the brain parts wrong, but less the analytical and much more the heart. And the people in Hawaii, which was going to be the market potentially for this, would understand the word mana, right? And if it's scaled, they would have to understand where that came from. So working with people on an individual basis, because I pretty much work now, with a variety of brands, a lot of times with founders or individuals like yourself that are making some kind of transition in their traditional career corporate trajectory, whether they're a doctor or they're on the corporate side or whatever the case might be. And they just feel this calling to do something different, whether they know what that is or not. And to be in the marketplace, offering something that'll allow them to make a living, but more importantly, allow them to give back and be of service, right? And I typically find this with folks that are going into the latter stages of their life or the final chapters or however long your book you think is going to last, so that part means something different potentially, right? But how do we create success for that? Because there's what tenets of the other branding world where you just are going to create a brand so you could sell the most stuff that you can, kind of in a materialistic sense. How do you take those things and apply those in maybe more of a conscious or spiritual way and viewpoint in branding for yourself personally for what you want to put into the marketplace? Whether that's a product, a natural product or whatever, or a service that you're going to be offering where you'll be working? And then how do you scale that from just being you one-on-one with people to, well, how many people can you see in the day, right? Like a doctor, if you're going to see them, you're scheduling them, you're maxed out at 10 or 12. How do you scale a business that's a service business or a coaching business if you're working one-on-one? How do you grow that, right? Do you do the Tony Robbins thing where people are flying into your Tahiti island and you're charging them 20 grand for a weekend? Or what is the model for that kind of stuff? And all of those are different depending upon obviously who you are and what your energy and how you're coming to this thing and how you're being called to it. But the thing that I found working with all of those folks is that no matter what, they couldn't ignore this calling for very long, because that knock on their door would become an incessant, constant, louder knock until they paid attention to it, right? And many folks were told by other people, well, you got to go through this whole business process of defining a business plan, and all, there's a structured, linear way of doing this, right? And I would say that for them, if this is much more of a spiritual calling of something that they feel like they have to do or have to provide, to really look at it from an awakening creative perspective. So I would say even before you figure out, who that target audience question, all those kinds of things that Monica kind of pushed back on, which was excellent. I would say, have you explored what this thing is going to creatively look like, right? What that brand expression is going to be. And Sandra and I would call that a brand identity or a logo, but it's obviously much more than that, because it's that acorn that you're going to create in a visual and verbal way that becomes the oak tree of your offering, to use that metaphor. Okay.
Well, can I interject just for 1 second?
Please.
Because I think of your brand, it starts with just a really clear vision. And it is that acorn. And I love that metaphor, because as you change and your business grows, that little acorn also grows. The vision changes and grows.
It does. And that tree and that brand can provide shade, or whatever the metaphor of the tree. Yours might be a mango tree. Whatever your kind of tree of your brand is, it will provide different things to different people. Sometimes they just need shade. Sometimes they need a piece of fruit. Whatever the case might be, right? And so this branding process really is a spiritual one to begin with, as you guys are all probably in the process of, and really looking at what is your why. And if you haven't seen Simon Sinek on TED Talks talk about this, I think Sandra may have shared that with some of her folks. You really need to go watch one of his videos, because he really nails it when he says, what is your why? Why are you doing this? Not to make money, what is it that won't happen in the world if you don't do this for yourself or for the world in total? And when you really get a clear why, and I think that speaks to what Sandra said, apart from the product or service kind of, definition, it's the energetic why that is the key for most people to hone in. Is if you can nail that acorn for what you're trying to do, and at least get 80-20 on the journey of that, everything else kind of unfolds from that.
Can I say a little bit about the why?
Yeah.
Because I think of it as, like, a lot of the people on the call today are coaches, like that there can feel like there's this huge sea of coaches out there. And how do you differentiate yourself? And the thing is, each person is so unique and brings something different to the table, that there's that uniqueness that can infuse your brand. Like, I don't make a distinction between personal branding and business branding because of that. Like, I think who you are infuses what you do. And I like to use Apple as an example, Waven, because you can see so clearly how, especially in the early days, what Apple created was a direct expression of what Steve Jobs was fascinated by and interested in, what he loved.
Well, his, having a little bit of tangible experience, his vision brought other people that energetically aligned with that, right?
Yeah, and that's part of having a strong brand. That's part of it.
And through that ripple in the pond, which they use as a visual metaphor for their branding and their design for many times, right? The little pebble, ripple, and kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. because he created that. And apart from who he was personally and what his personality was like, he created a tonality for the company that drew other people to it and aligned with that vision, right? And so that law of attraction, for not, to use something like that, but not necessarily in the way it was put forth before, it really is kind of an energetic alignment, if you will. All of you, even if you all decide you're going to be coaches or life guides or whatever the point might be, and I've worked with a few in my background also, you're not going to compete for the same people. Because if you truly align with the why or why you're doing this, you're going to that offering is going to create an energy that will bring or attract the right clients to you. And of course, you'll have to qualify whether they can afford you, all that other kind of stuff. But energetically, what you're trying to do in branding is align what is your heart and your vision and your calling and your spiritual reason for being, frankly, on the planet. Why the hell did you come here? What did you come to do? What is the legacy you're going to leave apart from, I had a corporate job, I made a lot of money, I bought a lot of stuff. What is the other thing that you're trying to do? Align that and get in touch with that why, and then you'll be led to the right people who will help you as practitioners of branding create the right visual and verbal expression for that. And then the tactical touch points of what do you do in the material world with what print, business card, all that kind of, that's tactical stuff. That's the easy stuff. Not easy. That's not the heavy lifting stuff.
That's not the hard part of the branding. Yeah.
You find the people that become your partners in that, and they'll create beautiful things for you. And Sandra and I both know that we get it right when the client looks and says, wow, holy French shit. Well, how did you, and the challenge is you energetically have to align with that person and really listen from a heart perspective, an energy perspective. And just like coaches, that's what you guys are doing with your people too. You're listening with the big ear of your heart, right? And discerning what they're not saying and reading energy that they're not sharing with, right? And all that stuff comes through for the people that are gifted in the ways that you guys are, because you're called to be coaches, right? You can be psychic, you can be intuitive, you can call it a number of different things. We call it coaching because it just happens to be non-polarizing for a lot of people. But you really are spiritual guides for other folks. And because of your life journey, in whatever nuance it is, you have a degree of experience and expertise and intuitive maturity that other people will find attractive and be called, and they'll resonate and they'll come to see you. So your gap is to put a visual and verbal brand in place that does justice and authenticity and represents that authenticity of who you are. So you attract the right kind of people for your right kind of services.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're pointing at some really important things. When that vision is an authentic expression of who you are, it does resonate. Like it doesn't, like I find, because I do both this brand coaching and I do what I would call straightforward transformational coaching, that I have people who follow me in the brand coaching and hire me for traditional coaching all the time. And I'm fascinated by that. And I think it's just, there's a resonance.
And there'll be people who will want to engage your services, will have no idea. They'll be clueless of why they're attracted to you.
Yeah.
And then their logical brain will be like, well, I really love your logos. Or, I'm talking to Sandra, and I really love the work that you do. What? Yeah. What they're really attracted to is the energy of what you've put forth in your portfolio, if you will, right? And the people that you've worked with and how you each individually interact with them. Mike, the gentleman that mentioned, he had the big list and he's putting that out there, but he's really kind of making a grassroots effort to get in touch with people. That's huge, right?
But it doesn't hurt to, just from a marketing perspective, to let people know what you're up to, for sure.
Totally. That's why I would talk about, if we talk tactics on this call, we can talk about everything from a logo to a business card to social media to website and all those things.
Yeah.
But to me, that stuff is not as important and not as key as getting the spiritual brand essence why part in place.
Yeah. Can I ask you to talk a little bit about, you have this beautiful metaphor of how sculpture is created that relates to branding. And can you talk about that?
Yeah. So in Hawaii, it's a really small market. You guys may or may not have visited. It's about 1.3 million people. And tourism is this big thing. So a lot of the brands there are tourism-based. But the consciousness of branding in Hawaii compared to what Sandra and I are used to in the States, especially in the West Coast or on the coast parts of it, right, is nowhere near. If they think that if you had a logo and you applied it on everything, you're good. That's a brand, right? We check off it's like something you check off.
Yeah.
So when I would come in and talk publicly, try to educate people and levitate the tactics of branding to the gestalt of branding, if you will, and talk about it at the mana or essence level, I know the Hawaii people could get that because it's a pretty spiritual place, but nobody's kind of put branding with that together as a context for them, right? I had to come up with a way to kind of demonstrate that, a little story. So what Sandra was referring to is on the website, I remember that there was a really powerful quote from Michelangelo, at least was subscribed to him. And I figured, even if let's use it, it fit. And it's a quote that says, basically, and him paraphrasing, I didn't as much create the David as remove the excess material from the block of marble to reveal what was already within. And so the beauty of that, and that's how I use that story to say how we would approach working with somebody on their branding, is that I don't come in as a branding expert to tell people what their brand is. They're like, here it is, and you're going to fit that. It's much more of an intuitive sense of working with somebody, like you guys would with Coach, figuring out what the David is in their block of marble. And then because I have experience in this profession, and it is my personal, professional expertise, and 30 years of doing this, just like you all have your background, knowing what pieces of marble to remove to help reveal what's already within. And that message was very different for them. They had a lot of people saying, pay me, because I'm an expert, and I'll tell you. You just sit there, shut up. I'll tell you. I'll come back to you with your brand. Versus, we're going to work together in a collaborative process, respectfully. I'm going to come in as the expert on branding, and the expert on you and your branding and your why. And working together, I'm going to use my tools of discernment and listening and intuition and help bring forth that. And then I'll come back to you and reveal in a visual and verbal way what would hopefully resonate. And through that process of creative collaboration, we'll arrive at something that would be your acorn, your logo, and then we'll express that across all the touch points you would have with a prospective target audience, right? Energetic target audience, not necessarily this, as Monica so well said, this defined target audience archetype thing that we're used to creating for corporate clients because that's what they expect. A lot of stuff we do in corporate branding, people, is so that you can sell it up and protect yourself. It's not necessarily what
it's a different world when you're talking about a company and what happens on the branding. I mean, this is a funny story, but years ago I worked at this high-tech company called Liberate Technologies, and they existed in markets around the world, and I had these brochures translated into Chinese, shipped to China, and they were blocked at the border. They wouldn't let them in because when they read Liberate, they thought it was propaganda. This is back in the day. This is 10 years ago.
That's great.
And we had to rebrand the company just for China. Like stuff like that is not unusual in an international brand.
Yeah.
There's craziness and different.
Or the naming of various Chevrolets for the Latin American market. That's another one in the branding annals.
Yeah.
So, I've done a lot of talking and sharing with you guys. Any feedback about any of that stuff that might resonate or make a little sense, or just have, with Sandra, I know you've probably heard this before, but I know that it's not just general common thought in the general business branding world to bring the word spirituality and energy and vibration.
And I like, and part of the reason I wanted you have you on the call, Waven, is that you bring the spiritual perspective, but you also understand that we're also working in the real world of business.
Yeah.
Like that there is this vision that can arise from your heart or your spirit or wherever you want to say, but then there is an intersection with the real world and what the world wants and needs.
Amen. I think it's great that I'm a Virgo and Libra cusp, right? Because I can work with yoga people, like people who, to run meditation centers or yoga retreat. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. We're going to get in touch with our why. But we still need customers to be aware of you.
Still like where the rubber hits the road. Like,
unless you're self-financed and you were a billionaire and you're just doing this for fun, then why would you need the brand?
And this morning, Waven sent me this great article, and I'm just going to read the last paragraph of it to you guys, and I'll post it on my blog. But it's about branding in this little beverage company. And this guy says at the end, his best advice to brands seeking consumer loyalty and relevancy is, in an increasingly competitive market, dissect why people are buying your product. It sounds like a simple product. It sounds like a simple question. Boy, I can't read. But when you break it down, it's a complex thing. Brand. There needs to be a reason why people are purchasing your product. And it's the same as coaches. Like, why would somebody be hiring you? Why would they be purchasing from you? It's like there's an intersection between this beautiful vision you have for your business and why someone would want to hire you. Like, what's the usefulness? Like, what's the value? How do you talk about that too? I think of a great brand as both of those things. What do you think, Waven?
Yeah, the thing I would say to you other folks too, and I'll use the Michelangelo metaphor, right? Because I love the power of storytelling, and that's another thing to remember in your brand, specific to how you would tell your stories, right? There was an interesting thing about this block of marble that Michelangelo got. Now, when the powers be, which were the church at that time who had the money, they didn't choose Michelangelo first. He wasn't really as famous as he is now. They had gone to a lot of other sculptors, but there was a problem with the block of marble that they had, which was still pretty an expensive thing, right? Especially at that time. There was a crack in the base of it, in the base of this big block of marble, a crack right in the middle. And if any of these sculptors screwed up and that block of marble shattered, that's a big problem. And that's a lot of money that would be gone. And Michelangelo was the only one who would take on this assignment with the crack in that block of marble. Where did that crack go with the David, if you can picture what the David looks like today? Anybody got an idea?
The space between his legs.
Bingo. You've heard the story, Monica, probably, or you just obvious. Right between his legs.
Visually.
What he intuited, right?
Monica's an art expert.
What he intuited was that he could see the David and he could see how that crack would work and he could see how that block of marble. So what I'm saying is that whatever imperfections you guys think you have don't have to be removed. That's part of your uniqueness when you go to market to offer that. Each of your individual journeys, each of your cracks, if you will, and your divergences in your journey are things that are going to provide a nuance to create your own David that's going to attract your unique person who would want to work with you versus somebody else. It doesn't have to be contrived. What I'm saying is this stuff is authentic. It's real. All you're working with people like Sandra and I or others is to not get in the way of that, to help you bring that forth, because we know Photoshop or we know colors or we know whatever we know. But if somebody knows Photoshop but doesn't have the heart to work with you to bring your brand forward, you will not feel alignment with them at you guys' level, is what I'm saying, right? That's why it's really key that you'll qualify who you work with on a tactical, tangible, practical basis of expertise. But then you have to add that heart component to your practitioners on top of it. And you guys will be doing the same thing with your brand as you put that into the marketplace. And trust me, if you do that correctly And correctly means not like by a rule book of some sort, but correctly with an alignment with your own David of expression, if you will. People will find you. It's crazy magical. It's crazy serendipitous. It's crazily divinely inspired and guided. It doesn't happen like a tsunami, but it happens. I've seen it so many times, time and time and time again. I'll tell you one little story and then I'll stop. So my auntie in Hawaii had a garbage man who comes by her place to pick up her garbage. And this guy had a business where he picked up people's garbage and he also did lawn mowing, right, for the lawns in Hawaii. And so he would see me go into my office in my auntie's house and do this branding work, right? And this guy is just a basic Hawaii guy who's a hard worker. We're calling, lifting containers of garbage and mowing lawns and all that. He's like, Waven, and I'll break into a little bit of Hawaiian talk. It's like, what kind of business you do? That branding stuff. What is that all about? Make pictures for people. And I'm like, well, I help people, design their logo and he goes, you can do something for me. And I'm like, I'm sure we can. He goes, yeah, I don't have nothing for handout. I need something for handout. So we did it as a little spec project because the universe told me to, right? And you'll do things like that because no money, no expectation of any return, just as you're told to by your guides. So I did. So we created a two-sided card. I mean, so simple. One side had a garbage service with a little cartoon that my creative director did, and the other side had a little lawnmower. They were designed with the same look and feel, all the right branding stuff, right? And just had his name. He didn't have email. He had no website. He just had a phone number. Come on. And a truck. He goes around it. So I printed 60 of the cards, these nice high-gloss cards from Moo Printing or something, right? And I gave it to him. And I made them satin so that, in his pocket, they would last. They would stand up. A couple weeks later, I see him. So I'm like, hey, bro, how's the branding thing going for you? And he's like, bro, this stuff you do works. He goes, I was at some lady's house, and she said, what you do? And I gave her my card, and I was lawn mowing. She's like, oh, you do garbage collection too? She goes, yeah, come back. I'm going to get, and he goes, now I have another account. And he goes, she asked for some other cards. And she goes, I'm going to hand your cards out because these are so nice compared to what your business is. How you're presenting yourself is so professional and so nice and so cared for, right? She got his heart in his business, even though he had shirts tattered and he's garbage truck, right? He got other clients just from having his business card be representative of his service and professionally crafted at that level. That makes sense? Because energetically, his brand captured how he saw his profession, not as a garbage truck guy, but as something he did with pride and with integrity.
And care.
And care. And that's what we tried to capture in his cards.
Yeah.
Not make him something he wasn't, but show the heart. He didn't have the t-shirts. He didn't have the fancy outfit. He didn't have a fancy truck. But we were trying to show the essence of how he cared and was passionate and was professional and could be trusted in his brand for a garbage man. And I was like, man, universe, that's a lesson. If we can do it for the garbage guy, if we apply the same spiritual principle of trying to express someone's essence, right, versus the product or service, we're onto something here. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a great story, Waven.
So,
I'd love to open up the call. We have about 15 minutes left just to see if people have questions, anything they'd like to hear more about. Monica?
I have a question. I'm sure it won't be the first time you've heard it, but sometimes I wonder whether I'm really best suited to be doing, because I have the skill set of design and, branding and marketing. I have a pretty good eye for that, but sometimes I feel like I'm too close to do it for myself. And then I go back and forth because I'm like, yeah, but nobody knows me better than I know me. And yet sometimes I'm like, oh, I think I'm getting a little too navel gazing here. Maybe I need some perspective. So I just thought I'd hear what your take is on, like, I know some designers have like an absolute, they don't do their own work. They always outsource it. Do you have like a perspective on that?
God, I do. Yes and no. And I would ask the doctor, Libby, would you be your own doctor? No, I mean, Libby Lee, you can answer later. I do think that you can be too close to it in that sense, right? We know, from having my own branding agency, I know what the look of it is, right? But I have a creative director I work with, right? So I kind of cover the business suit side, and he covers the pure creative, like Sandra, right? And there's a nice kind of yin and yang with that, right? Mm-hmm. He's told me, he's like, man, I would never want to do the stuff you do, like interacting with clients, trying to find news business. He's just, I just want to focus on the creative, right? That's his calling, and that's what he's amazing at. So if you're trying to do both sides of that yin and yang itself, I think it's really helpful if you're kind of more the creative energy, if you will, to stereotype this polarity. Mm-hmm. Find somebody who you can talk to on the business, the other side of that, and vice versa, depending on where you're coming from. Because I think that yin and yang dynamic or tension or polarization really helps to bring up some of the nuances, if you will, right? Maybe Michelangelo asked, hey, I got a cracked marble, what should I do? He's like, put it between his legs. That might have come from an apprentice. Hey, good idea.
Can I comment on that too? Do you mind? Like, because I know when I was developing my branding harmony site, I went around and around about the images and which ones to use. And a good friend who knows me really well is also in the world of branding. I showed it to her, and she was like, and it was just great to get her feedback. It's nice to have somebody else look at it. But I didn't do it, but Waven's suggesting. I think of him also as Dean.
Go back a long
and
way.
I wish I had. Next time I'm going to ask you, Waven.
Yeah, and you kind of build up an unofficial board of directors, if you will, for your brand or your life. Or you know who those people are as we're talking about this topic. You know who you could trust that would know your heart, right? Mm-hmm. And you can just show them things from whatever creative person you might work with or yourself and say, does that resonate? Does that feel like me? I mean, don't ask them like color, technical stuff, but just ask them vibrational questions, right? Does that feel like me? If you saw this on a website, would that be like me? These little pictures of cows in the field. And they're like, no, you're totally a giraffe person. What are you doing with cows? So
I think that's a good differentiator is the because it's easy to ask someone, what do you think? Is it, and then they'll be like, yeah, it's pretty. Like, so I think it's
what is it?
Yeah, it's a nice delineator to be like, does that feel like me?
Does it feel like it? Does it resonate? And they're like, no, you're much. They won't have the focus group language like we know, right? Because we're in the business. They're going to come from an energetic thing and be like, well, shoot, I can't say that. I got to be smart. I got to make it sound more intelligent, make it sound smarter. No, you want the raw, undiluted stuff, right? The visceral, reptilian kind of, yeah, or not. Does that make sense, Monica?
Yeah, no, it's good.
So yes, you can do your own stuff, but I think to Sandra's point and my point, bring in some outside assistance to help that. And the other thing I found is that if you're the only one doing it, you never get it done. If my creative guy was the only one working on the website, we'd never launch it. I'm like, it needs to be done in a month because new clients are going to be looking at because of our email program. Get it? So, okay. Because it'd never be perfect enough, right? He'd always be crafting it, which is why you guys are so good at what you do.
Well, and that reminds me, I've worked on a lot of tech startups. People tend to launch software, hardware, whatever, when it's good enough, not when it's perfect.
Yeah.
So many things go to market with quirks and bugs and this and that, and your business can be the same. It's just go,
And Sandra says a great point, you guys. As you're in this place of coalescing this spiritual energy of how you're going to put this in the marketplace, don't wait for perfection. Kind of take it from Microsoft, who's the worst example of this. Put the stuff in the marketplace and let the marketplace refine it to some degree. 80-20, okay, is kind of the thing I use already, right? energetically get a logo, put it on an amazing business card, if nothing else. Even if you don't have a website yet, and an email, which you do, unlike my garbage man, you have an email and a phone number. Get an amazing business card to start the conversation. You know, like the guy Mike was saying, where he's building up his database and all of that. When you have an in-person and you're handing them an amazing business card that is representing the uniqueness of you, incredible conversations happen just from that one little device, right? So don't wait till it's all done and it's all done perfectly. I mean,
well, and you know, the heart of any business is relationships. It doesn't matter what kind of business it is. So.
What else in the time we have left? Anybody? Libby, you're burning over there, girl. I hear it. I feel it. What do you got?
I think you're muted, Libby. Let's see here. How do I unmute you?
That's all right. I've unmuted myself.
Okay.
I just have an observation. It's just amusing listening to you. I mean, I love what you're saying about finding your energetic target audience. I guess I've heard that in different ways before, but I love the way you put it, and that makes absolute sense to me. I still don't have a proper website. I'm working on it, or someone's working on it, I hope. But if I go back about 5 years, I got close to having a website, commissioned someone to go off and put the bare bones together. And I was in a marketing group at the time, marketing mastermind group, and I took the shell of the website back to my coach, and he commented, well, Libby, it's very you. So we need to change this and this and this and this and this. And of course, by the time I'd done all the things he said, I didn't like it, so I never launched it. So it's nice to hear that from the other side.
Two things. If you have a name for your offering, or if you have a logo or whatever, right? I mean, those are two of the first kind of pivotal things you need, acorn stuff, right? Whatever the name of the brand is going to be, or some placeholder of that, and whatever that logo, at least something to start with, is going to be. Get a kick-ass business card, an amazing business card. The best one, the most coolest one, the pop-up one, whatever is Libby-ish for the business card.
Okay.
And don't worry about having the website perfect. Here's two things on the website stuff, right? If he said, wow, that is so you, that's an energetic response. That's legitimate. If someone like Sandra or Monica looks at a website and says, I get you, but here's some best practices for navigation and contacting us and where the button should go, those things should change. That's not an energetic reflection. That's you know what a difference is, what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like that guy he didn't like her representing herself.
Well,
it is a more traditional marketing perspective.
They were working very much to there is one prescription for how you market your business.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite fitting with that. So
that's it. So what I was saying is, there are best practices from a design perspective with navigation and all those things, right? I mean, we all should follow somewhat in that.
Yeah.
But then the expression part, and that's the 80-20. The 80% should be you and the 20% should be the convention of like, well, the page doesn't read from the bottom up, or from, unless you're Arabic, right to left, that's kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that kind of fits in your business too. You may be telling people, here's how to go about achieving a health goal or result, but you also might customize it for that person specifically because you know their circumstances or their background or whatever the case might be. So don't get stuck on this website. Just go back to it. Get a kick-ass business card so that when you're out and you're handing something out, you have an energetic piece of materialization that represents you. How's that for metaphysical talk? There's marketing materials, people.
I love it, Waven, because
whether they're physical or digital is just an energetic manifestation of you and your offering, your brand. That's it.
Because who doesn't have a phone number and an email? That's all you need.
And I'm telling you, if you have memorable business cards that relate to, that align, people, and in this increasingly digital world, I think contrarianly that the physical things that we share and give out, thank you notes, all those things, those high touch things, become even more important because it's so less done. Does that make sense?
But I do want to say it doesn't hurt to have a website.
No, I'm not saying don't. Just like, don't wait forever.
Or a website.
Don't wait forever to take your brand out for a test drive, because you can achieve a business card pretty quickly compared to designing a website.
On Vistaprint.com.
Well, yeah.
I don't love Vistaprint.
Moo. I'm a thumbs up to Moo.
You know, Moo or somebody special. I mean, in the state, there's a Stranger and Stranger is a company, a branding company that does spirits only, and they're in London and San Francisco and New York. They have a metal business card that's etched, right? It's not readable. It's not, it doesn't follow the practices, but when he puts it on the table, it represents handcraft. I mean, Monica, you know what I'm saying, right? So if you can do that analogy for your brand, bingo, you've already energetically communicated to people what you're about and how special you are, and how, like the garbage man, how special you consider your offering, even if it is a ratty truck and you're hauling garbage, right? The branding can do something to create that for him. It surely can do something if it's authentically done for you guys in the marketplace.
Well, and I just want to say too, I like that you're bringing that up, because it makes it feel like easy, like you can just take one step towards bringing your vision into the world. It doesn't have to be everything at once.
Amen. That is it. Because in 5 years, we'll still be on a call like this talking about what you should do. And the world, listen to me, the world will have missed 5 years of your blessing in and being available. That's the downside of it.
I didn't have a website for years, and I was designing corporate brand websites, and the people would say, like, where's your portfolio online? I'd be like, not, cobbler with no shoes for a long time. And the same for my branding harmony. I was doing the brand coaching for years before I actually did a website.
We'll just go barefoot. Diane, you got anything there, Diane? You've been quiet.
Well, no, I mean, the call has been exactly what I hoped for, because what really appealed to me in Sandra's write-up was kind of your take on coming at it from a spiritual perspective, because I totally get that.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging to hear someone who actually does this acknowledge that that's really what makes things successful, because that's pretty much where I would have wanted to come.
Yeah.
Anyway, so as I said, I'm just scratching the surface of getting started. This has been great.
And Diane, I'll be so bold as to say it's really the only way to make it successful in terms of where you guys are putting your hard energy into the marketplace for an offering. Okay, it's not like if you want to sell widgets, there's a metric for success. We'll crank up the factory, but for the kind of energy you guys want to put into the marketplace, spiritually aligning, it's the only way, and it's the only sustainable way. So, however you find your way to that expression, right? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I want to see logos from Sandra in a week. No. Okay. And what about our mystery man, Mike, before we go? How's he doing?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting call, hearing where you guys are at with getting websites and branding stuff done. I guess I'm from the call perspective, a little bit ahead of the curve on that side of things, having had my website and cards and the branding bit done. Mine, from a marketing and brand values point of view, is really much now about getting the message out there, promotion. I guess more marketing the brand rather than and communicating the values of the brand rather than establishing the brand as much.
Yeah.
Okay. Good one. You know why? Because that's a perfect topic for a future Sandra one.
I think that would be very cool.
It's to talk about when we get from this place, how do we move into brand marketing, which is really getting traction in the marketplace, right?
Right.
And how do we do the magic or the alchemy of business development?
Well, we might have to have you back, Waven. This has been a great.
It's a one-time But no, there's a whole, we could have a whole nother discussion on that part, Mike, specifically. And I had a feeling that's what you might say, given where you are in your the progression of your journey with it, right? And one advice from the Mike perspective back to everybody, collect your testimonials from people, okay, people, as you go through. Get those little anecdotal stories like I told you about the garbage guy, and collect those stories and write them down, because they are gold to retell about your brand. And it's so much more powerful when you use someone else talking about an experience with you than you telling them, here's what I do. Where you're like, hey, here, let me share a little story with you.
It's the stories of your why.
It's the story. Exactly. Exactly. So that's the only teaser I would say, Mike, for a brand marketing discussion, is we come to it from that perspective. How do you carry across in a tactical way that energetic essence of what you're doing with your brand?
Sounds perfect. So I think that's the next one set up then.
There you go. You tell Sandra, and I may be invited back. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Definitely have you back. Thank you so much, Waven, and I appreciate all of you who made it to the call live today. It was really a lovely conversation, and I'll see you again next month. I think it's on the 8th. I don't remember. Anyway, I'll be sending out an email and I'll post it on Facebook.
And Libby, homework, business cards.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Waven.
Thank you both. That was great.
Thank you so much, Waven.
Aloha.